If you felt overwhelmed by feeling not enough, like you are not doing enough in all the different spaces of your life, this talk is for you. My guest today, Kyira Wackett, is here to share how radical acceptance can transform the chaos of motherhood. She is a therapist, speaker, artist, and founder of Adversity Rising, leading this anti-Band-Aid movement in mental health. She empowers individuals and organizations to break free from fear, shame, and quick fix thinking, teaching the art of radical acceptance and values-driven living. With a signature blend of her depth, honesty, and strategy, Kyira helps people confront the hard truths holding them back and design lives that are rooted in authenticity, resilience, and self-trust. Welcome, Kyira.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
You were part of the Whole Wellness Mama Summit with me previously.
hmm
So some listeners may know you already and be really excited just by hearing your name, but some may be brand new to you. So can you share a little bit about your story for those that are meeting you for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think about, and I've talked about this in so many different facets. Whenever somebody asks you, who are you? Tell us about you. I feel like your season of life and the context of the life that you're in right now always kind of colors the way that your story comes about. And so, thinking a lot about who we're talking to here in the work, I'm really kind of centering my story around kind of the mom journey. And so, I grew up with a single mom who struggled with a lot of trauma, some undiagnosed mental health things that led to her struggling with addiction and kind of a variety of, if we want to think about dominoes, just falling after one after another that made life very challenging for her. And so I grew up with her in my life and then kind of moving to a bunch of different homes and families and sort of looking for that sense of stability and structure and figuring out what that looked like and becoming the person that kind of overcompensated when the world wasn't giving it to me. So, as many of us can appreciate, when we're in a state of chaos, a lot of the times we sort of try to white knuckle get through and we try to create control in everything around us to make it okay. And so, as a 10-year-old, that's kind of what I was doing. And those foundational reactions to my trauma became kind of the underbelly of how I showed up in life. And so, I was constantly the people pleaser and the over controller. I was doing everything. I was overscheduled. I was overextending. I was constantly saying yes to everyone around me. And a lot of that was to try to mitigate some of those feelings of my early childhood trauma. And it worked really well because people love a people pleaser. They love the person that takes care of them. And that sort of high functioning, high performing person does well. I was very successful. I was always at the top of my class or getting into these high programs and chasing these dreams that I didn't even really question if they were mine. I just knew they were the dreams that everybody would be like, oh, yeah, she's something. She's smart. She's driven. She's whatever it might be. And in my mid 20s, I kind of had a crash with all of it. I had developed an eating disorder. I was this kind of constantly vibrating ball of energy, this anxiety, this sort of trauma response was all catching up. And I started to do a lot of my own therapy work kind of subsequently while releasing my, I guess, inherited dream, this thought that I was going to be a doctor, I was going to live this life, I was going to be with this person. This is exactly what the binder of my life was going to look like, and I was going to check the boxes. And I threw it all out the window. And after a few years of just trying to discover things, I ended up finding the idea of being a therapist as being the most calming and centered place to be. And I think the biggest thing for me was realizing throughout my life, I really hadn't had anybody that was willing to not only listen, but to say the things I needed to say and then hold space for me to feel the feelings around that and recognizing how important that is. And that really started my journey to being a therapist. And I've had a few different specializations. My primary focus was in eating disorders and trauma. But no matter who I worked with, the theme was really the same and who I was seeing in the door. It was usually people that had repressed or suppressed emotions, painful childhood experiences. For some, it was trauma. For some, it was the house and the family system looked great on the outside, but it was an insecure attachment. It was, I'm loved more if I do better. So there was always this kind of underpinning of rules and stories about who we need to be okay in the world. And I got clear that that was shame. That shame was really driving so many people suffering. And that got me to a place of thinking, what do I do to not only heal my own shame and learning that that's going to be a lifelong journey, but how do I sit in a room and work with people one on one? And now in these large settings like talks or in those trainings, to give people the space to undo that. And I know we're going to get into this concept of radical acceptance, but radical acceptance has really been one of the most freeing sort of anecdotes to the shame driven living that so many of us have gotten caught into. And so I'm really excited to be talking about that with everyone today, because that's a journey I'm still on and trying to figure out what that looks like for me now that I'm a mom to a 5-year-old and I am triggered all the time for these old stories and these people pleasing and perfectionistic standards and the do it all. And oh my gosh, she's a month into kindergarten and nobody prepared me for how much more stressful it is when they start school. Like she's been in kinder or in preschool, but man, does it trigger every part of you to be the perfect parent and do it all and say yes to everything. And so yeah, all in all, it's this kind of personal journey and this expansive journey with the people I work with now.
Yeah. So many things. I'm like, yes, yes. I'm like over here nodding like crazy. I'm also a recovering people pleaser. I'll say
Mm-hmm.
that. And I mean, the kids, each step, right? My kids are like almost 10 and 12, and it just, every step is something different, but
Yeah.
also really exciting. So it, parenting is just
Mm-hmm.
a big ball, a journey, throwing things at you. But I
Yes.
want to talk about this radical acceptance. I want to get into it because I've heard this terminology before, but a lot of people might be like, what is it? So can
Mm-hmm.
you start by just defining, what does it actually mean and why is it important, especially for us moms that are juggling all the roles and expectations and carrying this shame, not guilt, right? We talked about
Yes.
the difference about that when we had our last conversation. So we can talk a little bit about that too. But what is radical acceptance and why is it so important for us?
Yeah. So the idea being many of us struggle with control, either over control or under control. And if we kind of think about a spectrum, it's really difficult for us to be in the middle. Radical acceptance is about understanding what is and is not in our control and being able to accept the things that we can't control and let them go, and then really focus on the things we can. And the reason that I think radical is such a key component to it is you don't have to like it. I don't like that I can't control the fact that everybody doesn't like me and that I won't get accepted to everything that I apply to and every speaking event that I want to do. I don't like that. I don't like that I can't control the perception the world has around me and I still can't control it. So it's about saying I can have my reaction to it, I can feel the emotions around it. And that's still something that me putting more energy in, whether that is trying to actually control it or the constant berating, the ruminating, the overthinking that goes around it, it's not serving me or anyone else. And so instead, I need to anchor on what can I control? I can't control that my daughter's going to have a tantrum at some point. I can control how I choose to react in those moments. And ideally, how I shift from reacting to responding. That is in my control. I can't control the fact that I had childhood trauma that is being kicked up now as my daughter gets older and she reaches some of these milestone ages and is going through things that activate my brain and they trigger these responses. I can't control that that happened to me and that those things are coming up. I can control what I do with it, whether I turn and face it, and how I move forward. And those little pivots and shifts help us center on the things that we can anchor in and control. And they start to let us let go of everything around us in a way that we can make peace with the chaos a bit more and not get constantly stuck in the shame stories of, I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough, I'll never be enough, the world hates me, because those are usually responses to the things we've been fixated on trying to control that were never ours to begin with.
And I think that's so important. Like, I love that you gave examples because there's so many of, we feel like we're not doing enough, right? Or we
Mm-hmm.
compare because it is so easy to compare in this day and age with social media and all the different ways in which we can hear what other people are doing. And
Right.
especially in parenting too, right? You see other kids that are doing all these tons of activities. I think that's one that keeps coming up for me. And that's just not something that we want to do for our family of like all those things and packing through our schedule. That works for some people, but I also go, am I doing enough for my kids? Am I setting them up for
Mhm.
success? And outside of parenting, this also reminds me of a conversation I recently had about at work. There are like a lot of layoffs looming in the horizon for a lot of different
Yes.
people, and at the end of the day, for me, I'm going, all I can do is do a good job. I do my job, I show up, do my best. And if that's not enough, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But if I'm not doing my best, if I'm not controlling what I can control to give myself the best outcome, then that's on me. So,
Mhm.
am I applying it right?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the context of jobs and the loom and gloom of, am I going to be let go? I'm in Portland, Oregon. So I've got Nike, I've got Intel, I've got these other really big companies that I have a lot of clients that work at, and they've been going through this for years. This
Yeah.
constant, am I the next round of layoffs? Will I have a job? And we can see what you just said is key. Am I showing up and giving the best for me? What I start to see with people where we can use radical acceptance is, well, if I'm not going to take a break and go to the gym anymore. I'm going to stay late.
Mhm.
I'm going to do this. What we're starting to do when we overextend, we're no longer giving 100% of ourselves in the workforce. And when we come in and we're saying, I'm going to give it my all when I'm here, we're saying, I'm going to somehow figure out how to give 150% because now I'm going to compete for this job. Now I'm trying to control the outcome as to whether or not I am the one that gets let go. There's a degree of showing up where you can see it gets messy. Our values are there. I want to be a good employee. I want to show up. I want to invest. Also, when you stop skipping or you start skipping the gym, you start skipping your lunch breaks, you start keeping your kids in extended care so you can work more hours just to prove your commitment, you're now trying to control an outcome that's not really in your control. They're not looking at each individual person and saying how many lunch breaks did they take versus how many did they not, but you don't like the idea it's unknown. And so you're creating this, if I can just be better, if I can be the perfect employee, none of this will ever happen. Well, either you're going to lose yourself in it and you have to perform at that level for the rest of your life, which means you're anchored on the external validation, or you end up still getting laid off. And then it's, well, I just didn't try hard enough. Both of those keep you stuck in a shame story instead of going, I'm going to be the best employee I can be. I'm going to decide what I think and feel about this job and how this company is working around these layoffs, how I want to show up, what I am willing to accept, what I'm not willing to accept, how I can be a part of the team, and the rest I'm going to be neutral about because I'm not going to get lost in those things to be working for someone else's validation and or someone else's assessment of me and whether or not I'm good enough to be here.
Oh, I love that you pointed out those things because yes, that is the flip side, right, of trying to
Mhm.
to be the best and showing up as your best. I am not skipping my lunch break, so don't worry.
Good.
I'm still going to my yoga at lunch. Yeah, I talk about these things too. It's just really important for us to have ourselves, right? Our time for ourselves.
Yes.
Make sure we don't lose ourselves in motherhood or in work or in all those things. So I appreciate you reminding us of that because I think many moms, including myself, struggle with the all the things, right? Balancing all the things, feeling like we're not doing enough at home, at work, or for themselves. Like we feel guilty taking time for ourselves.
Mhm.
So, how can radical acceptance now help shift that guilt or that shame into something more compassionate for ourselves and sustainable long term?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple things that are really helpful for us to consider in terms of control and not control. So, one of the things you can't control is time. You're never going to feel like there's enough time because time is a finite resource. And so, this idea, there's a scarcity around it. There's always going to be a fear response in our brain if we put everything towards, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. We've gotten into these stories where we're leveraging everything against how much time we do or don't have. And then we're berating ourselves and judging ourselves for this thing that's just moving on its own, that we are not wasting or better spending our time. We're just in time. We're moving through it. And so that's one thing that I think we get so hung up on is this, how much time do I have? How much can I get done? We've all seen those Instagram memes and reels where it's like the mom that finally gets 30 minutes to herself and she spends the whole time running through the list of things she could do because she's like, I better make the right choice. And then she ends up doing nothing because she's so worried about doing the wrong thing. The other thing I think that's important to remember is you're never going to feel like you're doing enough because we live in a culture of comparative suffering and comparative worth. Meaning, when I was a new mom, the way that you feel better about how you are a parent, and my daughter was born during COVID, so it didn't happen to me as much as I think it would have if I was out in, different parent groups or out in the world, but it definitely still happened. When you feel like you're a shitty mom, the way that you feel better is you go, well, at least I'm not as bad as this mom. At least I didn't do this. And vice versa, the reason we feel like shit parents is because we're seeing the people around us. For most of us, that's on social media, but we all have that person in real life too, that we're going, well, I'm not as good of a mom as this person. We live in a culture that is founded on that comparative suffering and success. Because of that, the urge is always going to be there. So we're not going to be able to break away from that comparative piece. We just have to stop creating the inputs on a loop for us to be reminded of that. And so instead, when those things happen, we go, I'm never going to be that mom. I'm never going to be this mom. I'm never going to be this parent, whatever it might be. But that comparative piece of our culture, I think we try to control that to say, well, if I can get to this point, then I'll be good. This is what I'd see when I had my own eating disorder and I would struggle with, and many, many people struggle with body image and disordered eating, even if it's not an eating disorder. It's if I can get to this weight, I'll be happy. If I can do this thing, I'll be happy. If I can do this thing with my kids, I'll be a good mom. If I don't react at this time, I'll be a good mom. We're constantly raising the stake and we're saying, well, only then will I achieve good mom status. And so we're kind of making everything again graded based on that comparison. So I think those are two key things. If we can go, I actually can't control that. I live in a world where time is a finite resource and we are programmed to compare ourselves with other people. That's going to make everything harder. If we can get neutral about that, if we can radically accept that, I don't have to like it. It is what it is, though. It will help me move forward. So what can I control? I can control the fact that I'm constantly feeling as if I can't catch my breath. I can control that. I can decide how much I'm putting on my plate. I can control my beliefs. You can't control your thoughts. The thoughts that pop in that you're a bad mom, maybe you didn't do this right, maybe you should have done this differently. Those thoughts are going to pop in, but you choose which ones you hold on to and you internalize. And so anything in the world, there's different opinions, there's different scales, there's different spectrums. Again, whatever thing you're judging yourself for, there's going to be a mom that thinks they're better than you because you did it, and a mom that thinks they're worse than you because you did it. So going, okay, well, it just depends on the angle. We can control our beliefs. So you have to put work in, but you can control the beliefs you have about yourself. And it doesn't have to be, I'm a great mom, I'm a great employee, I'm doing it all. It can be, I'm doing the best I can for me. I'm living a life that feels in balance, and it's hard when balance doesn't always feel fulfilling. We can start to shift those beliefs. Once you do that, once you control some of those pieces, you decide, okay, what's actually important to me? Mm-hmm. I do judge myself if I raise my voice, if I don't do the perfect thing, if I scheduled my husband's birthday a couple years ago. I still laugh about this when my daughter was 3. And again, anyone that's had a 3-year-old or has a 3-year-old currently knows that sometimes you just cannot control their emotions. She can nap, she can have all the snacks, and she can still lose her flippin' mind because it's just the wind blew the wrong way. And it was his birthday, and I had this whole big plan, and we were going to go to the coast. And she spent most of the day having different iterations of the same tantrum all day long. And I felt like I ruined my husband's birthday. I wasn't, because I made the plan. I did this. I did something wrong. I can't control her. I can't control that it rained. I can't control that it was what it was. What I can do instead is change my belief around it to go, we had a day together as a family, and how beautiful that we got to explore that without being perfect. So I'm going to loop this back because I know I'm saying a lot, but essentially, again, we can't control time. We can't control that comparative piece. We can't control anything about anybody else. If we just want to say that flat out, what they think, feel, how we're measuring up, what our kids do or don't do, we can't control it. But we can control that reframe that we have. And if we can get to that place where I can say, gosh, my kid actually doesn't need me to be perfect. My
Mhm.
husband doesn't need me to plan the perfect day. Nobody needs me to have the perfectly cleaned house. My daughter actually doesn't need me to never raise my voice or never set a boundary or never have a hard day. My daughter needs to see the fluidity and the sort of ups and downs of life. She needs to see accountability modeled. She needs to see reflection. What did I need that I didn't get? I
Mhm.
don't think about the times that my mom wasn't perfect or when I lived with other family, they weren't perfect. I think about the lack of follow through and conversation around those moments. I think about not feeling heard when things felt really shitty.
Mhm.
That's what she needed. And so for all of us, we need to say, I feel like crap right now because I haven't done the dishes and the house looks a mess. And I feel like my worth is on the chopping block, and talk about it.
Mhm.
That we can control, looking out to somebody else. But no matter what, if you chase it, you're never going to feel like you're good enough.
I love that you ended with talking about it, sharing about it, like what is it that we want to model for our kids, right? Because I think it's
Yeah.
absolutely true. And I talk about this a ton too, where we need to be those models where we can come back and apologize when we blow up at them, or like things just don't happen the way we wanted, And
Mm-hmm.
I think to be able to see that and to work through it together and know that our parents are not perfect and that is the reality of life and that we're
Yes.
all working through things. It's a journey. I think that is huge. We also had plans that just blew up because of like hurricane in Florida. We were planning to go and we
Mm-hmm.
couldn't go. And especially my younger one was really, really sad. We were also really sad. But then we also had a fun, like, tourist day in our own city. So
Mm-hmm.
we did what we could. And now I have this terminology. I'm like, oh, Kira's putting words to what we did and how we were reframing things. And I love that. I also want to talk about how this looks for supporting the people we love, right?
Yeah.
Especially as our kids, of shifting these things because they also are growing up in this comparative nature, this
Yeah.
society, especially right now. I have tweens, right? Where all the devices start coming in. So and so has them. So and so has this game. So
Mm-hmm.
and so is watching this, whatever it might be. Every family situation is different. So obviously, we are having those conversations,
Mm-hmm.
but how can we support not only our kids, and this might be a really big question, but how do we support our kids in learning this radical acceptance mentality or, stance in life,
Yeah.
or friends that are going through, loved ones that are going through really hard times, and how do we sit with them in that?
Yeah. I think there's two pieces that are really important to help for us as the adults and then also to kind of teach our kids. And so one is the idea that all emotions and reactions are valid. And so again, when we're talking about radical acceptance, and I think for many of us, when we're in this constant go, 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 we make everything logic and linear. And so it's, well, what's the next step? I've got a plan for this. And how do I do this? Even thinking about our kids and them growing up, all we can do is, what do I do to give them the best life possible? And everything kind of eliminates the emotional turbulence. Even thinking about like how many of us want our kids to suffer and feel those things that we felt when we were picked on in school or when somebody didn't like them. We don't want any of those things to happen. And here's the trajectory and here's what I can do. So if you can bring to the table for yourself and for them right away, most of life involves some form of pain and suffering. That's not a bad thing. There's a depth to that. To love means to experience pain and loss and longing. To live means that we have to go through these big major pieces, and how beautiful that we can connect through that. And so having these conversations, I think, really early, and particularly for us to be having them even with ourselves, to realize when your kid gets picked on, when your kid is the kid that picks on someone else, yeah, sure, there's conversations we can have and maybe things that we can do to support them. But the reality is, those things are going to happen. We can't outdo the emotional experience of being human and trying to get connection on this planet. So I think that's one aspect of radical acceptance. The second thing to think about is everything that we do gets anchored onto one of two things: shame, which is the fear of connection, Fear of not being good enough, fear of not being loved. So then everything we do is performance. We've got to keep up. We see this with our kids now. I've got to have this game. I've got to play these things. I have to make sure I'm in the in group. They're not even thinking if they like it. They just know they have to do it to make sure they're like everybody else. And then there's values driven living, which is this is what's really important to me. These are the things that matter. This is the person I'm excited to be and embody every day. So if you bring those two questions and those two conversations to the table, talking about emotions and then talking about the distinction between, maybe for kids, I use the word shame with my 5-year-old. Maybe not all of us want to use those words with our kids, but you could also even talk about internal versus external anchoring. Where are we sourcing our power and our sense of self? Particularly with tweens, that's hard because they're like, I know, mom, like, get over it. Like, I just want to be this. But it is a conversation that's still really important to have. And so what we can do with those kids is to talk to them about how it feels to be in a space where someone else gets to do these things that we don't do in our family. What's that like? What happens for you? Instead of just going, well, people do things different in their family, we don't do this. That might still be true, but pause to talk about that. What's the fear? Well, if I don't have these video games and they're all getting together to play video games on Friday nights and I'm the only one without a Switch, I might not be invited. And then they might all start hanging out without me. And what if I don't have these friends anymore? Wow, that's really scary. Okay. And so this is feeling like you really want to have this game. You really want to be able to play games because they all get online together and they play. And if you're not a part of that, you're afraid you're going to get left behind. Okay. Now you have more information to start to respond to them and to think about the values. Okay, your value is connection. You want this relationship with your friends. It's not so much that they're trying to push a boundary to get the video game. They're just afraid of what's going to happen underneath. Same, I guarantee you, parents, if you have tweens, even teenagers, and sometimes probably even elementary school kids, most of when they are asking for things is that they want to be like the people around them because they're afraid of what would happen if they're not. Yeah. So if you can get at that, the radical acceptance piece is there's always going to be this fear that you will not be chosen. Mm-hmm. And that is painful. And as an adult, I still don't know what to do with that because I worry about that every day. I'm afraid I won't be chosen at work. Sometimes I'm afraid that I won't be chosen in my friend groups. Mm-hmm. What's most important to you? And sometimes we layer that in our house. This is a value that we have. Mm-hmm. For us, for example, we don't watch more than one movie a week. She does not get to turn on the TV during the week. We have one movie night. It's very intentional. I know as she gets older, things will change if she hangs out with friends. But for right now, that happens in our home in this control setting. And so when she talks about these shows that she hasn't watched, that everybody around her talks about at school, she wants to watch these shows. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to watch those shows just because everyone else does. But then I go, okay, but you're feeling like you can't keep up with your friends. Okay, we're still not going to watch those shows. We're not going to watch a bunch of TV just to catch up. Are there other things that we could come up with to help you feel more connected? What if we rented some books that are around, like an example, Paw Patrol? We never watched any of those shows. They're starting to age out of it, thankfully, because I was so sick of reading them. But let's go to the library and let's rent a bunch of Paw Patrol books. Let's read about them. We can read the stories. We don't have to watch the shows. Let's do that. As we get older, we think about Snapchat. We think about TikTok. We think about these pieces. Okay, you want connection. Are there other ways we could do that? Or are there ways, depending on your comfort, we can bring that in that allows you to get back at your value? The third piece that I would have us think about when we're supporting our kids, particularly, they are not programmed to think about long-term consequences. There's so much beauty in their brain that they're in the right now, which for most of us as adults, that's our problem, is we don't know how to be in the right now. We're ruminating on our past and the things that we didn't do, and we're dumping on ourselves, and we're judging ourselves, and we're resentful of other people, or we're afraid of the future. Yeah. They are really great at being in the present. On the flip side, that lack of understanding consequences long-term is not something their brain can do. So we need to help them understand that. Here's my fear. If I give you free rein to these things, I might be wrong. This might never happen to you. And this is what I'm seeing. This is what happens to a lot of kids. I don't want you to lose that connection by chasing this thing that you thought would bring you more connection. I don't want you to feel this way. I want to help us figure out a solution that doesn't also lead to that. And sometimes it might be trying things out with regularity. Sometimes it might be we're just not even going to try this. But the idea being for all of us, when we're talking about supporting our kids in radical acceptance, we need to allow the possibility that they are going to be in pain. And sometimes they are going to source us as the reason they're in pain because we're setting those limits. We need to be able to hold space for that because we can't control that. They're allowed to be upset. They're allowed to be mad. They're allowed to be hurting. They're allowed to be whatever it is. We need to allow all of that to exist without thinking it's our job to fix it, whether we think we caused it or the friend down the street caused it or whoever else it is, and then really help them re-anchor on feeling seen, safe, and heard with us, and then making whatever decision they're doing based on the values that we want to help them cultivate and or they're telling us are important to them as they move forward.
Roblox was the thing for us most recently where we were like, I'm sorry, but that is not
It's
something
just
that,
not a thing. Yeah.
yeah, just we talked to them about all the reasons why we do not
Yep.
want to start down that route. We understand that probably everyone else at their school is doing it. But we had that same conversation of what else can you do with your friends online
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it might be that we feel more comfortable with. So as you were talking, I was just like, yes, yes to
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. We talked about a lot of different things,
Yeah.
but we always like to leave our moms with what is one challenge or small action that people can start doing right now? Because it can be overwhelming to think about, okay, where do I start? What can I do? I heard all these things. How
Yeah.
can I apply them? So, what
Yeah.
is one thing we can tell our moms, one simple practice they can start doing today to help bring this radical acceptance into the everyday chaos that is our lives?
Yeah. So, what I would say, and this is pretty accessible because most of us can get a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil at any point. And so, think about this as your pocket tool that you can use. So, you can do this about life in general, although that starts to feel a little bit overwhelming. My suggestion would be to pick something that you're struggling with. So, a couple examples just in my life right now, it could be my daughter is playing tag at the bus stop in the morning, and she's the youngest one playing, and it's all boys and her, and they all try to take her first because she's the smallest and the slowest. And that's really hard to watch. And so, sorting through what do I do about it? Do I tell her not to do this? I don't like this feeling. What do I do? How do I help her? That's one example. Another example is a couple of days ago, I was really struggling. I hadn't slept really well. I wasn't able to be the mom I wanted to be. I was kind of reactive and snarky and I didn't like it. I like kind of borderline lost my temper. I was just very abrupt with her. I'm still ruminating on it. Another thing might be a work meeting. I have a big call tomorrow that I'm talking about and kind of pitching myself to do a keynote. So these are just examples for you to think about. And hopefully that makes you start going, oh, well, I'm worried about this, or I'm thinking about this, or I'm stuck here. But pick something. What you're going to do is you're going to take your piece of paper. You're going to put a big circle in the middle. Leave enough space on the outside. Don't fill the entire page with your circle, but maybe about half the page of your circle. And then on the inside of that circle, you're going to write in my control. On the outside of that circle, you're going to write out of my control. And then with whatever that situation is, I want you to think about everything you can control and everything that you can't. Inside the circle, we're putting all the stuff in our control. Another big one, I have a client right now who's having to set some pretty firm boundaries with their aging parent about how they're showing up in their life and the role that they're playing as a grandparent to their kids. And so one of the conversations we're having is, well, what's in your control? What you say, your willingness to receive any conversation back, how you show up to the conversation, your emotional reactivity, and whether or not you give into that or not, how you say it. So, not just what you're saying, but how you say it. Is it an email? Is it a text? Is it over the phone? Is it in person? That's all in your control. What's not in your control? How your mom responds.
Mhm.
Your mom's tendency towards gaslighting you into not having a feeling, into feeling bad for her. Your mom's pushback, your mom's pain. If your mom is hurt and upset, you can't control that. Now we go back to what's in our control, how much of that you choose to take on. Whether or not you erode your boundary because your mom plays that victim role, that she's always played with you because it works and she gets her way, and you erode your boundary every time and you don't hold it because you feel like you're a bad kid. You can decide whether or not you do that. And so you go back and forth, what's in your control, what's out of your control. And you just start to sort it out. Our brain really likes to see things on paper. And that idea of the circle and holding that circle gives us a sense of empowerment. Again, everything on the outside, you don't have to like that you can't control it. It can still cause you to feel scared, overwhelmed, angry, frustrated, all that. That's okay. It's still not something that we can control. So then what you do is you look at everything in your control about whatever that situation is, and you decide, how do I want to show up? What are my values? What do I want to do given these are the things that I can control? And then you start to play that out. What if I said something? What if I didn't say something? And you decide from there. But that practice, it's not a simple, here's my solution, now everything is fine. But that practice starts to get us to anchor on what we can control and to learn to grieve and release the things that we can't, and or at least accept that when we move forward, I can't predict, I can't control what those things are going to be. And I still get to decide what I do and how I show up based on these things that are important and the values that I want to use to guide those specific pieces.
Oh, I need to go find my pieces of paper. And we want to hear how people do with this, right? And so if there are questions, if there are particular comments that people want to make, please leave them. We love hearing from you. We'll have all the links to find you, but can you share how people can connect with you further?
Yeah. So my website, I think, is the best place. You can find links there to my podcast, to my YouTube channel, to all of the different programs that I do. You can also use my Connect page and send me a direct email or book a consult call if you want to chat more about what I do or how we might work together. So adversityrising.com, all the links are accessible to you there. Make it a one-stop shop for everyone.
Perfect. Anything else that you want to add for our mamas before we sign off?
I think the thing I'm reminding myself right now that is helpful is when I started to learn this concept, I didn't realize how quickly I was making it an achievable thing. If I can just get good at this, then everything's going to be fine. If I can just better control this and release these things and do these pieces, we start to again scale it, then I'll be happy. Then things will be easy. It doesn't make the other parts not painful. I still struggle with the fact that sometimes I'm super reactive as a parent. I have these things that come up and I feel all this pressure to be the best mom that sometimes my expectations lead me to become reactive. And they're not expectations of my daughter, they're expectations of myself and how I'm supposed to parent. And that's really overwhelming. And so one of the things I think sort of radical acceptance, like a little inception here is you're always going to feel that bit of pull and that turmoil because you care. And so really making peace with that of knowing I'm going to have invitations every day, all throughout the day to believe I'm a terrible mom because I really do just want to be the best mom that I can be for my daughter. It makes sense when the stakes in my life are always, I have to be this to be accepted, to belong, to be okay. So to not get to a place where I feel like there's something wrong with me that I'm having those thoughts, but to know that's normal. And the more we talk about it with other people, you and I have very different backgrounds, very different lives, and yet we both have felt that. We both ruminate on those same things. To build that community helps us center on maybe it isn't that I'm a bad mom. It's just that it's really hard to feel like I'm doing all the things I want to do. And sometimes we've made it that being a mom somehow means we have to erase our humanity and somehow be robotic and perfect. And that's hard. And so I think for all of us listeners, I'm not giving you the quick fix. I'm giving you some ideas of what you can do to work through the pain and to start to make sense of it. And so to remind yourself, this is part of what it means. You're not doing it wrong. The fact that you're even noticing this and you care says so much about you and your values. And to just kind of hold some space to allow this to be part of the process rather than judging yourself that you can't get this now right too all the time.
Thank you for that reminder. And if people have listened even to the very end of this, you're a great mom. You
Yes.
are trying, you are doing all the things, right? And we want to acknowledge that. Thank you, Kyira. This has been just a ray of sunshine for my own life as well. It is an honor having you back, and thank you so much.
Thank you.